Hi, I'm Diana Smith. I'm the coordinator of Metchosin Art Pod. We're a artist-run collective. Metchosin is about 40 minutes from Victoria on Vancouver Island. We've been running for about since 2019. We have shows every 2 months. This show is called Pretty Ugly: Art Beyond Beauty. And we always ask a guest juror to jury it, mostly because we're chicken shit, actually. we don't want to we don't want to say no to people, but we really care about the whole feel of the whole show. It's important to us, and so we choose somebody that we really respect, like their work, and think they would just do a really good job. So Angela Menzies is another member of the collective, and her and I were showrunners for this show. It was our idea. And I suggested, I had been, there's a local artist called Cheryl Taves that does a creativity coaching course, which I took several years ago. And Caroline, you were, there was an interview with Cheryl and you. And I just loved it. It was one of the highlights of the course for me. The course was great, but I just really appreciated your presence and what you said. Angela happens to work for Cheryl. So when I suggested to Angela, how about Caroline for a juror, she said yes. So, and then you said yes.
Yes,
So
I did.
that's how it happened. So the concept of the show is to just, art is so much about beauty, you know, what you want on your living room wall. And well, I think locally it could be like that. So we wanted to make that a bit more, look at that a bit more carefully. So we put out a call. What we do is we put out a call, and it can be from, mostly it's the local community that responds, but in this case, we had a person from Texas that has their work here. Many submissions, and you chose 35. And we also thought, because I think it's a very challenging topic and a very interesting topic, so I wanted to talk to you more about it, hear how you chose the work, but what you think about it, how it informs your own work, your own artist,
Yep.
your own work. Maybe I'll just introduce you briefly.
Briefly.
I would recommend people go to your website and read the whole biography because it's very lovely. But I'm just gonna, the nuts and bolts. I'll just talk about. You were born in 1962 in Calgary.
Yes.
Grew up in Alberta. I think at 16 years old, you took Art 11, and you were introduced to drawing, and you just found the magic of drawing. And I think a lot of people in Art Pod, and probably look at this interview, get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not just your beautiful shoes, but your drawing of the beautiful shoes
Yeah.
is special.
Yeah.
You moved to Victoria, went to Camosun College, and did an elective in art. And I think that sounds like another pivotal
It was.
moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
You went to UVic with a BFA and got honors. And then you went to the University of Saskatchewan with an MFA. And that you had a grad show, and your thesis, which I'd love to read. It's not online, folks, but maybe one day.
Soon. I
Yeah.
will do it, yeah.
It was nominated for a Governor General's Award, and also it was nominated and won the University of Saskatchewan Award of Excellence in Thesis Work in Arts and Humanity. Did that. They headed to Victoria.
Yeah.
You must have been doing a lot of art. You
Was.
had work in Fran Willis's gallery and other galleries.
Yeah.
Many things. You ended up going to Hornby Island and living
Yeah.
for 13 years and doing, it sounds like, a whole different kind of work.
In conjunction with, with the fine art.
You
I will
all
fill in the blanks.
fill all
Yeah.
this in. And
Yeah.
then 13 years later, you moved to Gabriola Island and have been there since.
Yeah.
And this is the work we always invite the guest artists to put work in the show. And this is the work. I really like it. So,
Thank you.
so
That was good. That was a good introduction.
how does you and your artwork resonate with the theme of the show? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, what a big question. Well, when I knew I had to come and do the interview, I was kind of, had to go look back at what I had done, which I haven't done for a really long time. And in the process of looking back over my career as an artist, especially my career in school, from the beginning, I don't think I really realized how transgressive I have been, really, until I sort of looked back at my history of making. And I think that I was always on the verge of ugly beautiful and always pushing the boundaries, but I didn't really see it that way. For me, it was just it's who I was as an artist, and I was always in trouble, always doing things without permission. I don't think I mostly ever even asked for forgiveness afterward. I just pushed myself through, and so when I look back at particularly in school in my formative years, I was told, sort of in no uncertain terms, that I should probably stick with waitressing. But I didn't listen to anybody, and I just put my blinders on and moved forward. And I think a lot of people were shocked in the end, with what I made of myself. But there's something to be said for blind stubbornness, I guess, and also a little bit of emotional maturity, maybe, because, when you don't know what you can't do, you don't know you can't do it. So when I was presented with this opportunity, I was in a particular place in my life where the idea of art beyond beauty and the ugly beautiful spectrum in art and in life was very up for me, and it felt exactly right at the time. So I welcome the opportunity to be transgressive in art again.
So, and what does it mean for you? You said you're always on the edge between ugly beauty.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Say, particularly in art, for instance.
Yeah. Well, in my third year of my BFA, without telling anybody, and without any prompting in terms of whatever, do this thing, I had somebody photograph my nude body in all of these sections. And then I took the photographs, and they were just sections of my nude body, so you couldn't really tell it was me. But and then I had those photographs put onto glass, so they were clear. So they were just black and white photos, and it were broken glass pieces. And I made dozens and dozens of them. And then I went into the art building early in the morning when there was nobody there, and I laid all these broken glass pieces all the way down the hallway, like flagstones, but all broken glass. And so when people arrived, you had to walk through or around or in between, or try not to step on these pieces of glass that had the images of my nude body on them. And I got in a lot of trouble for that. But I was getting to a place where I really wanted to talk about, and I didn't even know I wanted to talk about, that I needed to talk about identity, sexuality, power, empowerment, power over, family dysfunction, sexual assault, all of those things. I didn't know I wanted to talk about them, but I knew that I needed to talk. And I have always been trying to get people's attention and get my own attention as well. So in the fourth year, I discovered the work of Marlene Dumas. She's a German oil painter. She does very provocative, very intense oil portraits, very ugly and very transgressive portraits of women. And her work is very much about identity, sexuality, power over. And it really, her work broke me open into a really powerful body of self-portraiture. Um, so, I've always looked to people who are in trouble to move me forward. And, I've always been in trouble, so to speak. I put that here. And it's just what I've always done. It has never felt terribly important to do otherwise, I suppose. But, that's just me. That's just been my journey.
So I'm thinking, so for both a viewer, how, I think sometimes things that aren't, floral, Georgia O'Keeffe's beautiful big poppies or whatever, it's hard for people sometimes to understand it or relate to it or whatever. What do you think? I always like help as a viewer. Because I know that one of the things, we have openings, which we're going to have tomorrow, and it always blows me away that people are so serious about what they do. And I love hearing all the things that went into it.
Yeah.
And it just helped. I just appreciate it more.
Sure.
So, what would you say to viewers looking at your work?
This work in particular?
Yeah.
I'm happy to explain everything I do. I love it when people want to know. Like, I love people's curiosity. Not everybody wants to know, and that's okay. But if somebody wants to talk to me about where the work came from or how I made it, even the specific details of the materiality of the painting, or technique, I love talking to people. I want to make it, once it's made, I want to make it available to people. I want them to understand if they would like to. But I don't think about that when I'm making it. That's not part of my concern. But if people are curious, and I love talking to people about the work that I make, and I want them to understand, for sure.
So what would you say to this piece? Like, it's called The Lamppost. I was wondering about the title. I mean, I love titles.
I'm going to talk about this specifically tomorrow night.
Okay.
But I'll tell you briefly. I'll just give you the last little bit.
Because this might be a standalone. People might see this that won't be here tomorrow.
Opening, right. So,
and only we will hear.
Well, in December of 2020, on the 16th of December, my wife, Deborah Lynn, died of cancer. So I won't get into, the more detail around that, other than to say that it took everything from me. It took everything. Everything that I thought mattered no longer mattered. It took my creativity, it took my purpose, it took my teaching, it took financial resources, it took her, and she was the center of my life. So for a long, long time, my life was very dark, and there was a point in time where all I could see was the ugliness of everything that I had become, because I felt empty. I felt a lot of shame. I felt tremendous jealousy and envy for people whose lives were not destroyed. I felt anxiety and despair and everything that grief is paralyzing sometimes. Well, a lot of the time. And I could not find my way back in the studio. I couldn't. I was just paralyzed. I would go in there and write and cry a lot. And then I had a lot of very good friends taking care of me. And about a year and a half into that grieving process, a friend of mine invited me to her home for dinner and drinks. And there was a new woman on the island who was invited as well. And after dinner was over, she brought out a set of O cards. So O cards are 2 decks, one with a series of words and one with a series of photographs. You take a card with a word on it, and you take a card with a photograph on it. You put the photograph in the center, and then it becomes a metaphor that you have to speak to in your life. So this is a game. It's a very powerful thing to do. So everybody was going around talking about the card that they had chosen, and I chose a card, and the word I got was ugly. And I was so struck by that word that I cannot remember the image that I chose to put in the center of it. And when it was my turn to talk, I broke down in tears, because you're supposed to relate what's happening there to your own life. And I realized that what I felt at the time was that that I was ugly, because I had lost everything. There was nothing left of me, and that probably I would never have any value again as a human being. And so I became very emotional and very upset trying to talk about what the reality of this was for me in a group of women who were basically just drinking wine and having a nice time. And I got up and left. And the woman who had been invited, who was new to the island, to this friend group, unbeknownst to me, followed me home. And I was sitting in my studio crying. And she walked in to the studio and had come to comfort me. And she walked into my studio and she put her arms around me and she said, "I don't know who the old Caroline was, but I think this Caroline is beautiful." So that woman is still in my life. When you and Angela offered this opportunity to me, I was so excited about it because I wanted to. I had so many powerful thoughts and feelings around creativity, and ugly and beautiful. And while I was mulling over what I was going to do for this show, Michelle, who was this lovely woman, and I walked over to Nanaimo one day and to do some shopping and spend the day. And on our way back, I went to press the button on the lamppost for the walk light to go. And she said to me, "Don't touch that." And Michelle is a newly retired RCMP officer with a long career. And I said to her, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Don't touch that." And I said, "Why?" And she said, and she pointed to the lamppost, and I said, "What?" And she said, "That's shit." And I looked, and the whole lamppost was smeared with human feces. And I looked across the street, and the lamppost across the street was also smeared with human feces. And this is right in the downtown core of Nanaimo, which is rife with homelessness and addiction and despair and violence and crime. And it was such a powerful moment for me. I was just speechless, and she put her foot up to the button and used her shoe to press the walk light. And we went back home to Gabriel. I went to the studio next day, and I wrote a big, long list of everything in our culture that we're not allowed to talk about that is ugly. And it was a long list. And that became the jumping off point for this work, because I realized that what I had been through in Deb's illness and her dying and her death was very similar to the, ultimately the manifestation of this, this call for help on the lamppost. And I used the list to open me up to what it is that we're not we're not supposed to talk about, we're not allowed to have a kind of fulsome conversation about, because what you experience in grief and grieving is also, many people don't want to talk to you about it, like you get kind of shuffled off to the corner and everybody expects you to be okay in a couple of weeks,
Sunny.
Yeah, so, there's obviously much more to it, but that experience was so powerful for me. That this work just literally was created out of that experience standing in front of the lamppost and also watching, just beyond in the parking lot, all of these homeless people gathered and the addiction and, the poverty and the despair and, it was deeply, deeply affecting. So,
and the expressive, like the person that did it.
As an artwork, I could see this, because I have used my hands since art school. I've used my hands to paint, and I just looked at that, and it just tapped into me on so many levels. This, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me. And that's what we're doing when we're making art. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to talk about what matters or what's real inside of me. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. And here's this, the humanity and the inhumanity, the ugly, beautiful, the grace in all of that. It just came together for me. So it really struck me how we gloss over everything, that we don't really want to face or talk about or deal with.
Or other people don't want to face as well.
How's that?
Yeah, I think I get it. Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday. I think, and I can't remember the details of it. What I remember in conjunction with talking to you right now is that the person was saying that it's when you do your most personal work, which sounds like very personal, that you most connect with other people. Like you think that, oh well, I can't talk about that because that's just about my life, and it's people won't relate to it, and maybe there is way. I mean, it depends how successful you are in doing that, but there is a way that it comes through. I think the power, if you do it with such truth and power, and intensity, I think we will, as human beings, hopefully it will communicate.
Yeah, it's always been my understanding, as a teacher, and I've always encouraged people this way, that, if you are creating from your own unique, authentic voice, without judgment, without restriction, without limitation, that will be your most powerful work. It will be the most sonorous work that you can put out in the world, and other people will see themselves in it. I think, in terms of the beautiful, ugly spectrum, creating beautiful work, creating ugly work, I think they both have their place. But I think that we connect to each other on a soul level when the artist is really taking a risk, to do or say or create something that is very, very real for them. And that, to me, that's beautiful. Even if the work is ugly, if it is that person's truth, and if they're speaking from their authentic voice and experience, whatever it is they're making, it could be dance or poetry or writing. It doesn't have to be painting or, but that's when we pay attention, because they've taken a risk, and you can feel the energy of that. You can feel the soul of that, and, people are spellbound by that energy because they want that. We all want that. We all want to be able to express ourselves that way, And so when they see artwork that does that, they're captured by it because we want that for ourselves.
Well, it's so rare too. It's like you don't talk about sex, don't talk about how much money you got in the bank, and it's almost like you don't talk about those darker things in us.
No.
You know, it wouldn't be appropriate at the dinner party that you were at or whatever it was.
No, you know, it's not appropriate to sit at a dinner party and cry either, you know, people don't want to see that, you know, you have to get up and go to the bathroom. So, and yet, we're all doing that all the time.
Oh, I think we crave it. I think we're hungry for that connection. Oh, there's something. It's not just it's like Facebook. Not that I'm a big Facebook person. It's like everybody's having this great life but me. But it's like when somebody's expressing that. I love reading memoirs. I'm reading Nanette by Hannah Gadsby right now.
Oh.
But any good memoir, they're just very vulnerable. I notice you have vulnerability as one of your words on here.
I believe it actually, can I swear in this interview?
I think so.
Okay, it actually says fucking vulnerability.
Ah.
Because, you know, it's where you have to go if you want to create powerful, meaningful artwork. You have to go. You have to be vulnerable. And, you know, sometimes I'm just like, ugh, you know, but you have to go there. You have to be courageous. You have to take a risk, you know.
Yeah. One of the things you've said in your biography, and I've heard you say, is how the free expression workshops you give are as important or more important, or that aspect of your creative life is really important. And we are, as you know, you're offering a workshop here on September 9th, which I hope you have a lot of people register for.
Me too.
But maybe you can, because it's so important to you, and I'm just so very curious, because it sounds like that's what you're trying to give people an opportunity to touch by what you're describing for yourself.
Yeah. So do you want me to talk about the workshop a little bit?
Yeah, and
Okay. So free expression painting is it's a process, and it's a way of helping people to get very deep down inside of their own creative voice and drag up the things that really matter to them. And it sounds like art therapy, but it's not. It does border that sometimes, you know, so I'm very clear with people that I'm not an art therapist, you know, and there's things that I have 20 years of experience more now, you know, holding space for people. And I have had a lot of women mostly come, you know, who are in a very bad place, you know, so I'm very experienced and very good at that, but it's not art therapy. It's a way of getting deep down into your creative voice that allows you the freedom to create without judgment and without expectation of what the outcome will be. And for no reason other than to remain in the process, to have the joy and the power of simply staying in the process for an extended period of time without concern for the outcome. The workshops range from 1 day to 6 days. So a retreat is 5 to 6 days. We're going to do Introduction to Free Expression Painting, which is 1 day. So people will get the basics, you know, of what that's about. And it is, has been, I haven't taught for a very long time because of Deb's illness and, you know, my healing process after that. But it has always been the most important thing that I do. It is, painting is a really powerful thing in my life, obviously, but when I'm teaching and facilitating workshops, it's when I really truly feel that I am home in my purpose in the world. And it is a astonishingly humbling feeling to be of service. And that's how I feel when I'm teaching. So
could you, how, you're saying it's not like art therapy. How would you describe the difference? I mean, it's not that I do think it is, but it might be useful to.
So art therapy is structured with the intention of moving people into and through trauma. And in free expression painting, it's a very powerful process, and people do touch on very difficult things in their lives. Um, um, and I always let people know that it's possible that will happen. It can be a very emotional process, because people are generally, they're very blocked. We're blocked. We're afraid. We have a lot of anxiety about creating and expressing. And so when you touch into the places that you haven't allowed and accepted,
Especially the ugly places.
especially the ugly places, it can be a very powerful and very emotional experience. And allowing that to flow out of you and, you know, through you and onto, you know, through paint and brush and onto the paper that we use, can be very life transforming for people, and especially for it's very powerful. I have a lot of people come who have never picked up a paintbrush before. I have a lot of professional artists come who are just very stuck and very unhappy, very they've lost the reason they create, and they need to come back to that space somehow. So
What I was going to ask you, you reminded me, you're saying, you know, after Deb died, you just were empty and had no, you weren't going to make art as well as other things, but what touched that part again? What was it that brought you back to wanting to do art? I don't know if it's a simple answer.
Honestly, I think it was her voice, Diana. Even when she was sick, she would say to me, "Go to the studio, honey. Go paint." So, you know, in the year and a half or two now, it's been, it was 2.5 years in July, I hear her just saying, "Go to the studio, honey."
And do you touch her? Like, do you connect with her when you're doing that?
Yeah, very much so. She spent a lot of time in my studio when she was sick, you know, just so we could, you know, hang out together, and she's just there. And so it was actually part of the reason I couldn't go in there for a while, because she, you know, her energy was so powerfully present in there, and you know, it still is, but you know, it's softening. I had a most I'm going to call it a dream just to make other people comfortable, but a visitation from her when she took me to a place to show me the paintings that I should be doing. Sorry, people, that sounds crazy, but it did happen. And so
it doesn't actually. I'm not a very woo-woo person, but I can get behind that.
Yeah, it was very real. It was a very real and very powerful experience. And she's always, I can just feel her very gently saying, "Go back to your work. The world needs you." So, you know, and there's been many, many, many things that have helped me move forward again. And, you know, having this opportunity has been a really big stepping stone for me as well. It's been creating these it's a very healing process. And
Actually doing it.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hope. It is what I hope other people get out of making their work. Yeah.
When you know, there were many submissions to this show. Was it what? I mean, people can go on Art Call and see the pieces, or they can come to ArtPod and see the show. And we're not going to do a tour right now, but was there commonalities that you saw in what people, or things that you did see, didn't see?
Yeah.
Because there was quite a variety of
work. There was
work
a really big variety of
submitted.
work. Yeah, and I think I had set out some parameters, you know, of, you know, what I sort of was looking for. And I found it was a huge responsibility. It really was. It was a very big responsibility, you know. So I, you know, obviously, you know, wanted to be incredibly thoughtful about it. But I think the foremost sort of energy I was looking for in the work was that, like, was there a risk taken somehow? You know, because it's so easy to create something and then assign it to the theme instead of thinking about the idea and really delving into yourself around, well, you know, like the ugly card thing, right? So you've drawn the ugly card, so, you know, where is that powerful in you, right? So instead of making a piece of work and saying, oh, this one looks like it'll fit into the ugly, beautiful show, right? To have the courage to take the risk to look inside yourself or out in the world and find something that has some power, you know, that you can present that is real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you see, so the work you didn't choose, and did you look at the whole show?
I did.
How it would,
Yeah.
and what was the arc that you were, or just, was there an arc, how you were going to see how it showed together? If you know what I mean.
I think what I felt like because I set out the parameters for myself, and I felt like if I was finding work that fit into, you know, that sensibility, energy, essence, idea, you know, that context, that the work would hang together.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful show.
Yeah, when I was one of the people that was hanging it, and so was Irene, who was actually filming this. We thought, oh, maybe we don't have enough work or whatever, and it's always challenging, you know, you just have all these things sitting on the floor. And it just came together wonderfully. You know, there was something that spoke to something else, you know, we could put them together. You know, there's all kinds of conversations going on here.
Yeah, and when I was, you know, going through over the work that I, you know, had chosen, I had a sense of, you know, this is going to be a powerful show because you know, there was a kind of a, you know, a rawness to a lot of the work that I really appreciated, and I could see that they were talking to each other in some way. So yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say? I mean, I think you've shown or spoken about the reason that we wanted to do it. You know, that there's so much there, and it's a way when you embrace both the beauty and the ugly, and you're not even, that's not the reason you're doing it. You get to express something that isn't usually expressed.
Yeah.
And that's what I think people want to see, right? They want to see something they haven't seen before, but also that touches something in them.
Yeah.
So.
I think there's a place for every kind of creativity. You know, there's a place for beautiful work. That can be incredibly inspiring. And you know, so I don't think it's something that we should be judging in particular, you know. But I think that there's a really powerful place for every creative person to explore, and that is well within themselves. Hopefully without judgment and without limitation and without fear.
Just the one thing I mean, thinking about this theme, I often see the dark side of beauty, you know, that if you're not, you know, especially how we look in the world, especially for women, if you're not beautiful, you know, you have standards of what beautiful is, and if you don't meet them, and most of us don't.
No, I know.
So it's
98% of us don't.
That whole, it's lovely to have beautiful people, beautiful paintings, whatever, but if we can, I just find it quite harmful, that whole notion. And sometimes I just want to not have ugly beauty in the world, like just let's forget about it. So, you know, you're saying you know, I love beautiful things too, or what I think is beautiful, but that it comes with a price. you know, art, because we do judge, you know, when you think something's beautiful, there's sort of judgment in there.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
some extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something isn't. If that is, well then that is not.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
I want to say that's human nature. It's a bit of a simplification,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
thankfully there's so many, I'm going to say young artists, because most of them are younger than me, but they're like really exploring, especially women, like young women exploring the idea of beauty and identity. There's this really cool young woman named, I think, Nur Gurel, and she's on Instagram, and she's altering beauty magazine photos, like the covers of them. I think it's a hashtag toy with oh shoot.
You know what I'm going to say? We'll put it in the show notes or whatever. We'll try and put it in, Irene, we'll put it in the notes.
But
We'll get it
she
from you
takes the
later.
covers of these beauty magazines, and she turns these women into real women, so they're posed in these incredibly sexy, like upside down, bum in the air, whatever. And she puts real weight on them, and she completely shifts the, like the gaze. And it's funny. And it's a kind of a, fuck you thing. And she's just a really young woman out there saying, like, you're not doing this to me. And there's a lot of young artists out there who just are, making us all stand up and take notice. So
And what a gift.
yeah.
What value.
Yeah.
What wonderful thing to do. Yeah. And it does take courage, as you said, I think.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Good questions.
Yeah, and I hope people come and see the show. Hope people do the workshop. We'll be over for the 6-day workshop to Gabriola.
good.
Probably. I think we're planning a trip, the collective.
Are you?
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of the
Just before we go,
fantasies.
I want to very much thank my Michelle for those words in the studio that day, and for showing me the shit on the lamppost.
Both
For both
things.
And I think that's both were extraordinary gifts, and very real in a moment when I really needed to see.
And I want to thank Lydia too. And you don't see, Lydia is Irene, who's doing the
Hi, Lydia.
videotaping. She's sitting on the floor. She's the techie, the sound person. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Here's Lydia.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Diana.